Rockets blowing up. Now, I don't know. Did you watch the SpaceX rocket launch at all, Dr. Rod?
I didn't watch it, but I've read a lot about it over the last couple of months, that's for sure.
Um, and obviously, with your son-in-law being in the aerospace, I'm sure, and being an engineer himself, there's probably some pretty cool communications that are going on about this. What? Yes, it was a couple of weeks ago, but it was something that I really wanted to talk about, and it took us a while to. There were some other more important things that jumped into play, but it fit perfectly in this. How do we as leaders reconcile loss? How do we handle loss? Well, SpaceX seems to handle loss of multi-million dollar things good. So let's take a lesson from them, because they just on April 20, rocket ship, which was like the most powerful rocket ever built, called the Starship, exploded, and their explanation for it was a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. I love that. It blew up. No, it didn't blow up. It was a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. And they were quoted as saying it was a very successful failure. Why? Because what they actually said is their aim for this test, it was the first time that these two components had actually been put together. And this is the test was purely to see if they would launch. They just wanted to get off the launch pad. That's kind of all that they wanted to achieve. Now, they stayed in the air for like over 3 minutes, and then some jets didn't fire and things didn't uncouple, and so it started spiraling, and so they pressed the rapid unscheduled disassembly button to blow it up, so it obviously didn't hurt anyone and everything like that. And they were saying that, look, it exceeded our expectations. All what we wanted to do was get off the launch pad, and we got way beyond that. And so it's exciting. And was it a failure? Was it a loss? No. They say it was a success. Why? Because they set expectations. They set realistic expectations. I feel like that's the key. Disappointment is just unmet expectations. Who has control of expectations? We have control of our expectations. And I know I'm preaching to myself. I'm the worst one with this. Probably my most common conversation with Dr. Rod and my psychologist are my expectations. I have a lot of expectations. And it's how we manage our expectations is how I believe is one key way of how we manage loss. So, Dr. Rod, how do we, because it doesn't seem like setting your expectations for a launch of a multi-million, like probably hundreds of millions of dollars of rocket, setting your expectations of like, we just wanted to get off the launch pad. It doesn't seem like you think you'd be setting yourself up, like doing a test like that and wanting a little bit more than just getting off a launch pad. It doesn't seem like a leader would be driving their team to just get off the launch pad. But like, it seems like their culture, and what was actually quoted is they like to fail fast. It takes NASA 10 years in the report. It took them 10 years to build something to get to launch, and these people are like building it in a couple of days and then explode. Not a couple of days, but obviously. But how do we as leaders still try to drive towards an outcome? Let's call it results, but set that expectation to be so minimal.
Well, it's quite interesting that this came after the so-called failure of the rocket launch. I'm sure their publicity machine wasn't saying this is all we hope to achieve before the launch. So look, the philosophy of failing fast is quite a good one. Fail fast and early so you learn a lot of lessons before learning those lessons becomes so expensive, it could actually cause the whole project to fail. Look, it would be silly not to take the opportunity that a failure, so-called failure such as that occurring, you'd be silly not to learn from it because of the multi-million-dollar expense in getting it off the ground in the first place. So I remember John Maxwell, leadership author and speaker, wrote a book called Failing Forward, which Falling Forward.
Falling Forward, yes.
No, Falling Forward, because normally we fall backwards, right? So this was a bit of a play on words, but it was really focused on what we might learn as leaders from the mistakes that we make.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's unlikely that SpaceX anticipated the thing would fail. Otherwise, they wouldn't have launched it in the first place. But obviously, there are great risks involved with a brand new technology like that. As you mentioned, some of the engines failed on the first stage of the rocket, and the decoupling didn't take place as it was designed to do. So it sounds to me like there may have been some communication issues with the separation of the two stages of the rocket, and that could be human error actually in the writing of the code, which is very, very complex. So you want to learn about that because eventually these spacecraft are going to be carrying human beings in space. So you want to fix it if you can, and the sooner you fix it, the better. The failure of the motors.
I was thinking about that. The rapid unscheduled disassembly button that they have there. It would be much more difficult to press that button if there was someone on there, wouldn't there? Like that would make it a very difficult conversation.
That would be a very substantial ethical issue to consider. But I doubt that you had more than a split second to consider it. Or at the most a couple of minutes. There wouldn't have been much time. But I do think it's a good philosophy, as it were, to fail fast without failing foolishly.
Yes.
Because obviously a lot of money has been invested in this particular launch, and you don't want to waste money, and worse, you don't want to throw good money after bad. So once a so-called failure has occurred, you should do everything you possibly can to learn from it. And that has actually been the hallmark of space, or actually of explanation of not only space, but the air in general. If you go back to the early days of flying machines, there were lots of failures there as well, but lessons were learned. And one of the most famous, of course, would have been the Comet 1 jet aircraft. It was the first commercial jet aircraft that entered into operation. So it was a competitor for the Boeing 707, the DC-8, and the Convair 550, I think it was, or 880. Doesn't really matter. But the trouble is it crashed. Now, they actually ended up discovering that the crashes resulted from depressurization of the cabins, and it was actually due to the design of the windows, because they just carried over the design of windows from propeller-driven aircraft that weren't flying as high or as fast. And that was why they changed to using much rounder windows, because they can withstand much higher pressures. So you live and learn. Preferably, you do that before human lives are lost. So there have been many quite spectacular examples in space exploration. Remember that there was that one launch that went quite badly wrong, and human lives were actually sacrificed in that one. But a lot of lessons were learned. I think the important thing is we don't waste failures, that we actually use failures as an opportunity to learn, so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future.
Let's jump back to expectations, because I kind of feel like that's the key takeaway that I got from it. Obviously the failing and the lessons and stuff like that is crucial, but what really stood out to me is them saying, well, our expectations were, and actually they did actually say it during like the actual launch, as they were, the coverage of it, they were saying, all we want to do is get off the launch pad. And then they kept saying all the way through it, beyond what we expected. Oh, this is awesome. Everything from here on is a bonus. Hey, that was an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, put a comment below. And if you want to see more content like this, faith-based leadership development content, make sure you check out our channel, give it a subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when we release new content.